Hello, today we have the honor to have Dr. Odette Suter. She is a holistic veterinarian, an international bestseller author and lecturer, currently residing in Chicago area. She received her degree in veterinary medicine from the University of Bern, Switzerland, and a master's degree in psychology from the University of Santa Monica. She wanted to move to beyond the limitation of conventional medicine, which address symptoms, but often falls short into a true healing that we can start discussing today. Also, she began her studies then into holistic and functional medicine, where she learned Chinese medicine, veterinary spinal manipulation, chiropractic neurology, hormone balancing, applied kinesiology, wow, allergy elimination, animal communication, microbiome restorative therapy, nutrition, acupuncture. Wow, that's like a whole package. How are you? So thank you so much for accepting this invite.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I always love educating people. It's one of my passions is to spread the knowledge and empower people and such. So I do work with people all over the world doing that. So it's always nice to get to talk to new people, and spread it even further.
Yeah, we will talk then today to the Latin American people after we translate it. So thank you so much. Can you tell us first, how did you encounter this approach? Like what you think, okay, I need to do something different than the conventional, and what was your experience?
Well, I already grew up a bit unconventional because my, parents were more naturally oriented. We had an organic garden and we lived out in the country. So it was sort of part of my upbringing already. And, when I was in vet school, I learned some new things from a veterinarian from Germany about, how if we live in communion and in the way that nature really intended us to live, that we can be healthier, and that included obviously our animals. And so very early on, I was already exposed to it. I read some books from Tellington Jones, about doing a little massage on the horse I used to ride back then. And, it just was some natural thing that was already part of my life, early on. And then in vet school, I realized that we don't really have a lot for to help with chronic cases. It was all more acute care. And so I dove a bit deeper into finding alternatives to help support my patients because they kept coming back with the same issues over and over again. And we'd send them home with antibiotics, pain medication, steroids, you name it. But then they came back with the same thing. And I'm like, that can't be it. There's got to be more. If something breaks, I'm of the opinion that you can fix it, right? So let's fix the body. And that's how I got into all of these things that you mentioned.
Oh, that's awesome. One of the things that we love about you is your approach about poop. So we also love poop, and we have used that of healing the microbiome. Yay, the hat.
I needed a reason to bring it out, but let me just plug in my computer. Okay, hold on.
We love that hat. I haven't been able to find one here, but I'm on the look for, I'm searching.
Well, Amazon, I don't know if you guys get Amazon where you are, but they sell it.
So, we have used, the gentle healing of the microbiome with a lot of cases with the skin disease and digestive disease. So, if you can share a little bit how you use, also food and how to heal the microbiome and why poop is so important.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, food is important because it's what nourishes the body. It provides the cells what they need in order to function properly. And so with diet, you're really providing that to the cells, because without the nutrients, they just can't do what they're supposed to do. So if we feed them a diet that is void in nutrients, that has, is lacking energy. I'm sure you've gone to the store and kind of seen like a lettuce or something, and you're like looking at this thing and you're like, there's no energy in that, versus, I don't know if you have a garden. I have a garden. So when I grab greens from my garden that are fresh, they have a lot of energy. So anyways, the fresher we can feed our animals, the healthier they can be, because there are a lot of nutrients in there that haven't gotten destroyed by heat processing or agricultural chemicals. For example, if we spray a lot of glyphosate, which is part of Roundup, then the nutrients can't even get into the plant because the minerals get chelated, so they get attached, and then the plant can't take them up. So if we feed foods that are grown on this sort of soil, then they're already deficient in nutrients. So it's important that we feed a diet that is rich in nutrients. And unfortunately, the nutrient density has decreased significantly in the last, few decades because of agricultural practices that we employ. And then, on top of that, add the processing with high heat, which destroys a lot of nutrients. And then add to that nutrients or ingredients that shouldn't really be in food because they should really go to a landfill. So that all together is kind of like the perfect storm for the body then to not be able to function properly, and not just not getting the nutrients, but also being intoxicated with the chemicals and the end products that come from high heat processing, because these products can turn into toxic compounds that then affects the body. So you have a cell and you want to feed it what it needs, and you want to take away what it doesn't need and what's interfering. So diet plays a huge role in that, not just feeding what it needs, but also if you feed a healthier, fresher, cleaner diet, then you're also removing a lot of toxins already. So you're not feeding your animals toxins.
Yeah, and would you say that it's impossible to feed kibble without those chemicals, without glyphosate and all of that, right?
Yeah, even the so-called healthy kibble is loaded with glyphosate. Especially, there have been studies that were done, and they found that foods, especially grain-free foods, were actually higher in glyphosate than the ones that had grains in them. And glyphosate is an antibacterial, so it will kill the microbes in the gut. And then as a result, the gut can't absorb things properly, can't digest, break things down properly, and causes a lot of, and that results in a lot of inflammation, which then goes everywhere, because when we have a gut lining that's inflamed, it becomes leaky. So, the cells are really closely together of the gut lining. There's actually just one layer of cells, and these cells are really closely together so that the food has to go into the cell, be broken down in the lumen first, but then go into the cell and then come out the other side and go into the blood circulation. But when we have inflammation, we have a separation of these cells, and then food particles that are not properly digested can go through and then get into the bloodstream and the tissues around it. And that then causes a lot of inflammation, because food has to be broken down before it can be used. So if you have a big chunk of lettuce or some leafy green that goes into the tissues in the bloodstream, it can't be used because it's too big. It hasn't been broken down sufficiently. And the immune system also recognizes it as a foreign object. So what that means is the immune system comes running, tries to clean that up, and in the process, there's inflammation that is created, because an immune response always results in inflammation. You have the snots, right? There's inflammation because the immune system is trying to get rid of whatever is in there. But unfortunately, with leaky gut, if it doesn't get healed, we have this constant inflammation happening. So chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation is not something that the body very much appreciates. It actually damages a lot of other things as well, including kidneys, liver, brain, muscles. I mean, everything gets affected by this chronic smoldering from the inflammation.
Even behavior, yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Then it results in behavior issues, GI issues, skin issues, allergies, you name it. It all originates in the gut.
Yeah, leaky gut is such a big subject, and a lot of times it's really not understood correctly. What other, I mean, apart from the glyphosate, even if it's on fresh foods, what other factors contribute to leaky gut for the pets?
So any kind of antibiotics, especially metronidazole, has been looked at a little bit more, and that really decimates the microbiome, which is basically all the little microbes that are in the gut.
I love you so much for saying that. This is like awesome because it's so common in here. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I know in the United States as well, everybody is still handing out metronidazole like it's TikTok,
Yep.
The problem with metronidazole is, and there are studies coming out now that, first of all, yes, it decimates the microbiome for a long time. So a lot of times they don't recover. And that's why we see all these puppies who had Giardia as puppies. They get metronidazole, and then their entire GI tract is already compromised, and then they develop IBD as a result. So very common. But there are studies that are coming out on metronidazole too, that it's actually contraindicated for diarrhea, for acute diarrhea that's not infectious, because what they found is they found that in feeding a bland diet with psyllium husk resulted in much faster recovery than giving metronidazole. And metronidazole itself can actually cause diarrhea. So yeah, it's not a drug that should be used lightly. Definitely not.
Yeah. Okay, so we have food, antibiotics. Can we talk a little bit about pills for parasites like Rebecto and NexGard and all these chemicals that are really strong?
Yeah, those chemicals definitely also impact the entire body and the gut as well. How much they decimate the microbiome, I'd have to do a little more research on that. But all of these drugs that kill things, they also tend to kill other things. And they thought that glyphosate, for example, was only going to kill weeds and it was not going to affect animals or humans. But they completely forgot that we have all these microbes in us. So a lot of these things really cause damage to the microbiome. Rimadyl and any of these non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, steroids in higher dosages as well, chemo drugs. I mean, there are a lot of things that will kill the microbiome. And then the level of stress that we experience as well has an impact on the microbiome. Lack of exercise also impacts the microbiome, because studies are showing that if we exercise more, then we get a better microbiome. Disinfectants, I mean, everybody is using disinfectants on their hands. I mean, that ends up on your animals because you're petting them, and then they go and lick themselves, right? And it gets into their system and kills the microbes, and is also toxic in other ways. So it's not just antimicrobial, but we need to kind of get away from this whole sterility thing that we have going, and killing everything, and really making friends with these microbes, because they've been here for like 3.8 trillion years or something like that. Don't quote me on the number, but for a long time they have evolved from really tough exposures to high acid levels, to no oxygen, to ice, to everything. And they've continued to evolve up to now, and they haven't died in that sense. They've continued to procreate. And so we need to make friends, because they are they're outnumbering us ourselves by a factor of about 10, depending, sometimes less, depending on if you just went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Number us, and then from a genetic perspective, they outnumber us by a factor of 150. So who's running the show here, right? It's the microbes. And they're like a little chemical factory. They make all sorts of compounds that are good for the brain. So neurotransmitters, they make vitamins, they make taurine. I don't know if you guys had a lot of questions about taurine deficiency, grain-free diets, and cardiomyopathy. Did you hear
Yeah,
much about?
we can talk about it. It's something already in here that there are a lot of pet parents that think that feeding a grain-free is better than the grain one. But yeah, we can talk about it.
Yeah, well, here in the United States, everybody who was feeding a grain-free diet got scared out of feeding that because some veterinarian, without doing any research, decided that grain-free diets cause dilated cardiomyopathy, which is basically a dilation of the heart muscle, and then it doesn't pump enough, which was so wrong. But everybody is now scared by this myth. So anyways, that's why I mentioned taurine, because they think that there's a taurine deficiency because of the grain-free diets, but taurine is actually made by the microbes in the gut. So if the microbes are healthy, they will make the taurine, and that then basically tells you that, taurine is not the problem.
Yes.
Yeah, but anyway, so a lot of, they make a lot of chemical compounds that are essential for the body to function properly, a lot of signaling molecules that help communication and everything. So without them, we're nothing, basically.
I think now that we discuss what it affects, then how do you or do we treat the microbiome? In here, we don't have, companies as Animal Biome or anything that we could test the poop, honestly. But how can we address this?
Well, Animal Biome actually tests fecal sample from all over the world. So you
I
can
will
order
ship the poop of my pet.
Yeah, and then you just ship it because it comes in a little, you put it in a little vial that has a little bit of preservation liquid in it, and then it doesn't really matter how long it's on the road or in the air.
That's nice.
So they can test, so they can test that, and then most countries they can also ship the fecal capsules too to restore the microbiome. There are some countries they can't ship to because of customs. The UK, Australia. I'm not sure about your country, but that's something that you could ask them. But I have people from the Philippines who are ordering things from Animal Biome and from India. And
wow.
I mean, sure, it takes a little longer to get there, but it's definitely possible. So, with global shipping, we do have more options that way for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope that makes you smile and
when I do want to try it.
Yeah.
So from the food perspective, what should we feed them to have the best microbiome for our pets?
Well, because the microbes are really the ones that take in the nutrients and then process them. So we're not just feeding the cells of the body directly, we're also feeding the microbes. So if we feed the microbes a diet that is good for them, they can also thrive. And, a diet that's high in carbohydrates and high in processed foods has some toxic effect on the microbes, but it also will cause overgrowth of certain bacteria because a carbohydrate diet is processed better through certain microbes than a low carb, higher protein diet. So anytime you switch from a kibble diet, dry food diet, to a more raw, more fresh diet, then you're going to have a big change in the microbiome that happens. And that's also why sometimes when we do a switch like that, they will have a little bit of diarrhea in the process because there's some die-off of bacteria that happens because now they're not useful anymore. So and they're not getting the food that they used to get. So then they die. And in the process of dying off, they release parts of themselves that can basically be irritating to the gut lining and then cause diarrhea as a result. But that's not a bad thing. As long as the animal is feeling good, just let that cleansing happen. But, if you do it slowly, usually it's not a big issue.
Yeah. Okay, so we go towards more fresh food, right?
Yeah,
that would be the
definitely.
ideal.
Yeah. I always tell people that, if you're eating Cheerios for your whole life or McDonald's, you're not going to feel so good. And kibble foods, a lot of them, especially, the more commercial ones. I mean, some of the grain-free ones, they will have a little bit better ingredients in them, but because of the heat processing, it's still not ideal. But some of these other foods, they have all sorts of leftovers from the human industry that they would have to throw into the landfill, but that costs money. So instead of that, they put it into pet food and make money off of that. So these kinds of foods are definitely not good, and it's good to look at the label, especially if there's a lot of corn and soy and wheat in it. That's definitely a big no-no, because wheat has a lot of gluten, and then soy and corn are GMO, so they're genetically modified, and as a result, they are also sprayed with glyphosate, with Roundup a lot. And wheat also gets sprayed with Roundup, because what Roundup does is it wilts the wheat plant, and then that way they can harvest it sooner.
Yeah.
So at the end, they will just kind of douse it with Roundup. So, these types of things, and then anything that you don't recognize, if you don't know what it is, it's probably not good. And that's always my thing. Same with shampoos or any other things that you put on yourself or your animals. If you don't know what the ingredients are, it's probably not that great. And if you don't know what they are, then definitely do a little research so that you do know what you're putting into your animals or on your animals.
Yeah, okay. And can we talk about a few foods maybe that you really like for the microbiome, or a few supplements that, well, the microbiome loves?
Yeah. So I don't know, what are you talking about, brands?
No, like ingredients, like
Ingredients?
should I add broccoli, or I don't know, 10 different veggies for the food, or maybe mushrooms?
Yeah, definitely. Vegetables can be good. Dandelion greens are very good. They help to nourish the microbes in the gut. Sunchokes, they're also called Jerusalem artichoke. I don't know if you know what they are. They're like a root vegetable. They look a little bit like ginger almost, but they don't have much taste. No, so they definitely don't taste like ginger, because your animal would say, no, I don't think so. Then, broccoli, mole spinach, Swiss chard, carrots, beets, fennel, celery, and then a little bit of berries are good too. Obviously, I would try to stay with organic things, because they don't get sprayed so much, and berries are one of the most sprayed fruit, so to speak. So you definitely want to get those organic. And the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, they have a Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list, where you can see which berries or fruits or vegetables are most sprayed, and which ones are a little bit more okay to buy, conventionally grown. So that's a resource. And that same website, they also have a page where you can put in whatever chemical that you see on a bottle or an ingredient, and then they will tell you how toxic it is and what it does.
Wow.
So that's a very good resource to have. They also have a water testing, well, not a testing resource, but basically where you can put in your zip code if you're living in the States. I don't know if they did it for other countries as well, but you can basically, in the States, you can put in your zip code and then it will show you the most prevalent chemicals that have been tested for. But it's not a complete list, but it can help a little bit, you know, in that regard. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can put a little bit of herbs in it, a little bit of thyme, a little sage, rosemary, you know, things like that. You know, whatever grows. I also put, I eat, well, I don't have a dog myself right now, but I eat the weeds myself, you know, just because it says it's not good, you know, or it shouldn't be there. Doesn't mean that it doesn't have a purpose. So
You eat it. Okay.
yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. Now to the next subject, could you provide maybe some cases or which are the disease that or clients that you get the most of and you use, you know, healing the microbiome for them, like which diseases and so on?
Yeah. So most diseases that I see nowadays are really gut related, and I don't know if that has to do with my hat.
I
Because you
think
know
so.
you attract the people, and people know that I have a bit more experience with gut health and such. So definitely gut issues is definitely things that I see. A lot of reflux, diarrhea, chronic vomiting, just not feeling good, gassy, you know, bloated. Um, so some of those are definitely what I see. And then in conjunction with that, oftentimes they will also have skin issues, you know, licking their paws like crazy, ear infections, chronic ear infections, um, just scratching everywhere. Definitely, those are probably some of the predominant ones. And then obviously there are a lot of cancer cases as well that are, you know, that those numbers have gone up significantly as well in the last few decades. It seems like there's a bit of a spike happening at the same time or parallel to the use of glyphosate and the introduction of GMO plants. So there's definitely that as well. And with any animal, I always start out with testing because I want to know what the underlying cause is. Because one thing that we tend to forget is that we need to figure out what the problem is so that we can then come up with a plan. Because in traditional conventional medicine, we have a pill for every ill, right? So you have a headache, so what pill can I take to take away the pain, right? Um, so that basically leaves out the question, well, why do you have a headache? And if you know why you have a headache, then maybe we can fix the cause rather than cover it up with, you know, a Band-Aid, basically. But unfortunately, that same approach that is used in the conventional field has been bleeding into the natural holistic field as well. So now instead of thinking about what pill can I use, we ask, well, what supplement or what herb can I use? So oftentimes I, for example, have people who say, oh, my dog can't jump into the car anymore. What supplement can I use?
Mm.
And then I'm asking, well, did you try to figure out why your dog can't do that? I mean, is it because there's a deficiency in a supplement or is there an actual cause? And so when we figure out what the cause is, then we can fix the cause and then the dog can jump up in the car again. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to use supplements or herbs in the process as well, but we forget to ask why. And that's something that's only happening in the medical field, it seems like, because, for example, when the car engine light goes on, we ask why. We don't just put a piece of tape on it so that we don't see it, because otherwise we're going to be on the side of the road stranded, like, please, can I drive with you?
Yeah.
So we need to bring logic back into medicine and start out with testing. So when there's something that's not normal, we start with testing and figuring out what the problem is. And then we come up with a plan based on the results, and then we can get some healing from that instead of just wasting money and having like a pile of supplements. I mean, I have people come with bags, shopping bags full of supplements, and I'm like, oh my God, your poor dog or cat. Well, cats are a little different. They are like, well, I'm not taking that anyway.
Yeah.
But dogs will take whatever you give them for the most part. So it's really important that we figure out what the underlying cause is. And so for a lot of animals that have GI or skin issues, it very often starts in the gut. So looking at the gut microbiome, checking if they have sensitivity to foods, which that will also continuously, promote inflammation. And then, fixing that can already give us a lot of, or give the animals a lot of relief, because we're actually looking at the underlying cause. And the reason I'm so passionate about the microbiome is that with these microbes, when we replace them, they continue to work for us. So they're not just there for one day and then they're gone. They continue to work for us. So it's like bringing in cheap labor, right? Because with
Yeah.
some pills and things like that, you have to give it every day, basically. And with these, little, I call them the elves, the little microbial elves. When you put them in there, they continue to work for you, and you can just relax and have a nap and
You just need
take
to
care of
feed them, but with good food,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So just food and then they do their thing. And sure, I mean, we live in a world that's a bit more on the toxic end right now. So there's definitely more damage that can happen to these microbes. But if we test on a regular basis to see if there's some replenishing that's necessary, then you're pretty much setting your animal up for a healthier and longer life, of course. And I start with puppies already. First thing I sent them home with is fecal capsules, because I don't know what their mom's microbiome was, because that's how they get it. I don't know what drugs they've already been on. Well, sometimes we know, sometimes we don't. I don't know what they were exposed to otherwise. Maybe it was on a perfect property with no toxins, but then maybe the neighbor sprayed something and they came over and affected the puppies. So I always send them home with fecal capsules for a few weeks, just to really set them up for a good start. And especially those that were born through C-section, it's important because they don't get the right type of microbes when they're born through C-section. They get more skin microbes rather than microbes that are part of the vaginal flora. So
Nice.
yeah.
And would you say that for all the clients that do agree, do you always try to switch to natural fresh foods?
Oh yeah. That's always part of it. Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
No.
It's normal,
For
I
you?
think I think I only have one lady who's still feeding some really crappy
Cute.
kibble diet, and I don't even know why she comes to see me because but everyone else is either on a raw diet or a freeze dried, depending on what they tolerate. I mean, I'm not rigid in that, because every animal is an individual and needs an individualized plan. It's not a one size fits all. So older animals, oftentimes they will do a little bit better with a diet that is cooked, lightly cooked, or a lot of the small breed dogs, they tend to do better on a freeze-dried diet than a full raw diet. Somehow, I'm not sure exactly why that is, but it's something I've noticed. So I always tell people as well to let them be guided by their animals and what they like and what they don't like. If you have an animal who's not really into broccoli, why force it down their throat? Maybe there's something, because they have this innate intelligence to know what they need. I mean, of course, if you have a ton of treats, it's and all that they want is treats. That's not ideal either, because that's like a kid, like I don't want, I'm not hungry anymore. I can't eat any more salad. And then you bring out the ice cream, and they're like, oh yeah, I've got plenty of room here. So you have to also use some logic, obviously. Um, but yeah, let yourself be guided a little bit, because, for example, a lot of dogs and well, cats tend to be a little bit different, because they just basically they get addicted to certain foods, and then it's really hard to get them on something else, because of that. But a lot of times dogs, they're like, oh my God, thank God, finally somebody is bringing me some good food. When you
Yeah.
switch them to something fresh, and feed them some of what you have, as long as it's healthy as well. Obviously, if you're eating McDonald's yourself, I don't think I would share that with your dog. But if you're making a food that's not overly spicy and doesn't have xylitol in it, that's toxic, or onions, you definitely want to stay away from onions, because they're toxic, or grapes. But share with your animal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Finishing up with our conversation, could you maybe just provide like a special message to veterinarians here in Guatemala that are still like not sure of this approach? Like, what has been your specific experience, since I know that you have been, I don't know, for 20 years doing this, and you have seen like the entire approach of a really integrative medicine. So please.
Yeah, I think we have to bring logic back into the game, especially in veterinary medicine. There's such a fear of salmonella, E. coli, just infectious agents when it comes to raw food. But when we actually look at numbers of recalls, it's much worse. There have been a lot more recalls with the brands that are veterinary recommended, like Hill Science Diet, Eukanuba, and all of those. I mean, they have, not to single out anyone, but they tend to have much higher recall rates. And there have been studies done now that actually show how it decreases inflammatory markers when we feed them a fresh food diet. So they get much less of an inflammatory response, and as a result, they feel, animals feel better. I mean, I've seen so many animals transition from a kibble diet to a fresh food diet, and they get a step back, a spring back into their step. Their eyes are more shiny. They have a shinier coat. They lose weight, if they need to. They just feel better, they just feel better. They're happier, less tear stains and things like that, just overall better. And there are studies, and sure, there are not a lot of studies out yet, but there's more and more coming. And look to the people too, because the pet owners are really the indicators. Because if there are more and more pet owners that want to switch away from these highly processed foods to a fresh food diet, there's a reason for that. And we need, as veterinarians, it is our duty to listen to the pet parents, because they're the expert of their own animals. They know their animals better than any veterinarian could ever know. And that doesn't mean that we veterinarians are redundant, and useless. I'm not saying that at all, but we need to listen to them and be open to what they bring, and the information they bring. Because as a veterinarian, I know how hard it is to stay up to date with current research. Research in general has exploded. There's so much more knowledge out there, and there's no way that we can keep up with that. I mean, I typed in microbiome into Google. I had 118 million hits. So it's impossible. But if we are open to also listening and taking in what other people around us are saying, and pet parents are getting more and more educated these days, then we can learn from them, and we can also, integrate some of the things that they mention, and use them as, because they're already doing the experiment, they're already changing things, so why not watch and see what happens? Yeah, just watch and be open and support them in that. I think that's really important. And that doesn't mean that, pet parents know more than we do, because sometimes as veterinarians, we can be a little sensitive. It just means, just let them help us, as a vet. I mean, I listen to my clients when they come with something new. Sometimes I have to say, yeah, that's just a bunch of hoo-ha. But other times they come in with some new ideas, and I look into those and do some research, and it's quite great. And also, if they tell you that, oh, they did some research, well, then ask them to bring you that research, because then you can look at it, and you don't have to go do your own research. So use work as a team, basically, because we all have the same goal. We want a healthy, happy animal. I mean, we all have the same goal, so let's just
integrate everything, all the tools.
Yeah, exactly, because there are many roads that lead to Rome, right? Same with health. So
Oh, thank you so much. You will have an open house here in Guatemala in case you want to come visit sometimes. So you just contact me, and I'm making sure that everything will be ready for you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, I've never been to Guatemala. I went to Argentina and Mexico, obviously, not Guatemala. So I saw that. So thanks so much for having me. It's just been such a pleasure talking to you, and I know you're working hard on your end. So whatever you need, I'm here to support you. And if you want to do more of these,
no, thank you so much. Do you right now currently are accepting like online consultations?
Well, I currently have a program where I educate people on the basic 7 pillars of health. So it's in depth in those pillars. And then I do weekly live sessions for the people in the program, where we then take the information that they learned and translate it and apply it to their own animals. So then in these online sessions, live sessions, we talk in depth about the individual animals of the people to really help them and support them. And they also get online, like a online forum, kind of like a Facebook group, but not on Facebook, where they can also have community, because I think one of the big things that is a bit missing is that sense of community and support, because sometimes we can be in a situation where everybody is like negative, and so it can really help to have that support. So that's basically what I offer. And the goal, or the reason I started it, was because there are people in countries like, where you are, where there are not a ton of holistic vets. And then there are also countries where there are some holistic vets, but they're not available. So that then gives me the opportunity to fill a gap, to help and support people to understand things better, because we talk about lab results, how to interpret them, what they mean, the types of tests to run. Based on my own journey, I know some shortcuts of doing things that will get faster results. So we talk about all of that, and just get them to be even more educated and more empowered, so that they know what they're doing, and get that constant ongoing support. But it's also to really empower them so that they can become more self-sufficient, because I'm not trying to create more dependency. I want people to understand better and learn more about health in general, and ask questions. And so it's really a wonderful sort of group that we have. So yeah.
That's awesome. Like teaching the pet parent to actually learn themselves what questions to ask and how to do you know, just put attention on how the behavior or symptoms of the pet is doing, and then be able to work by themselves with a veterinarian or with you to do that. So yeah, that's wow, awesome.
Yeah, and then as a result, they're also better at explaining things when they're at the vet, and also explaining things to the people around them, you know. So it really is very empowering, and you know, we need to change in this world, and we need to change more rapidly because of all the things that are going on. And the more people know, and the more people there are who know things, the faster this change is going to happen as well. So I'm basically training troublemakers.
Yay.
I know. Yeah. So anyways, I'm big trouble. And you too, obviously. You wouldn't have found me. Trouble finds trouble or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. We support you here.
Yeah, no. And vice versa. I support you, obviously. And
No.
yeah.
Thank you so much. One last thing, can you say adios, which means bye-bye in Spanish?
Yeah, adios. Muchas gracias para todo
Guatemala.
esto.
Thank you so much.